Good morning, everyone. We are right now 67. That's a big, good number, and I'm very happy considering the stalwarts today and the subject of importance. People have been very enthusiastically on this Saturday morning been coming forward over. I would request Manoj to share his thoughts on the subject and take us ahead. Manoj.
Thank you very much. Indeed, a pleasure and honor to be here with a galaxy of eminent panel and superb participants. We have eminent experts among participants with great knowledge about corporates, banking, finance, capital market, industries. And today we have indeed a wonderful panel. We are beginning a new year. I wish Happy New Year and a great 2021 to all the participants and the panelists and everybody watching the and thank you conclave. I would like to acknowledge all the participants. It's really a full house. The series initiated by the participants themselves. The topics have been selected by the participants themselves, have received overwhelming response, and there is a request to continue the series. I was talking to a few participants and expert panel speakers last evening. Everybody has appreciated very much, and they are very, very keen to contribute to the development for the India growth story and through the digital means of knowledge sharing and experience sharing. Wonderful to have Shailesh.
Thank you, Manojji. Wish my colleagues a very happy new year. I must admit that participating in these knowledge series is truly enriching. I have had the opportunity to participate in quite a few of them. Manojji has been very instrumental. I'm sure there are other members, but I think there is a lot of hard work that goes on behind it. I look forward to sharing my experiences and learning from the experiences of other members. I think it's a great opportunity for people to share their views and learn from each other's experiences. I thank the Think Tank series, Manojji, and all the other members for this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing all members. The mandate to me and the agenda that was basically set out for me was basically talking about the management and resolution of stressed assets, excluding IBC and the RBI framework of the June 7th circular and the August 6th circular, which Panditji has so elaborately covered. I want to basically touch upon some of the other avenues that may be available to bankers, because these are something that we deal with on a day in and day out basis. I think just to put things into context, I think one must realize that lending money is, in my view, I think slightly easier in terms of, but when it comes to recovering money, it is a very difficult conversation to have with promoters, whether they have the intent to repay or not. I think before IBC, before these frameworks, it was very difficult to even get meetings with promoters, because once they're in default, they would refuse to meet bankers who are chasing them for money. Now that IBC etc. is there is a risk of time-bound resolution and they're losing the company etc. So at least they are meeting. But when you go and meet them, the first thing they say is that yes, we want to repay you, but we have no cash flows. So I think the conversation that you are trying to recover money starts and ends over there. And we as a banker will have to think about other ways in which how we can sort of create a win-win situation and get our money out. So I would just like to touch upon some of the avenues that are available generally for management and resolution. And the idea is to keep it a short 10 to 12 minute presentation, and I will try to stick within the timelines. Just to put things into perspective, what we are, where we are today, if you look at basically the closing balance as of March 20, we are looking at almost 9 lakh crore of gross NPAs which are sitting within the banking system. That's almost 9% of the total advances. So obviously it's a huge number. If you look at the slippages, again, that number is, it had spiked around March 17, March 18. Next slide, please. If you look at the slippage ratio, it had spiked in March 17, March 18. It is sort of lower than where we were, but it is still, about 4 to 5%. but that itself is a huge number where we are seeing the number of slippages in the market. Next slide, please. If we look at the trends in which how these assets have been resolved, yes, it's very easy for a bank to find a ARC to sort of take over the asset, subject to suitable commercial price, etc. But if you look at the graph on the left hand side, it does talk about that the book value of assets acquired has increased, as well as the acquisition cost which has been paid by ARCs has increased. But that translates into the graph on the right hand side, because the acquisition cost for ARCs is increasing, the number of deals which have been closed in the market is basically going down over the years. So that basically means that banks have to resolve their own stressed asset issues, and the opportunities in the market to sort of sell it down, etc., are limited. I'm not saying it's not there, but it's limited. Moving on, this I think is a very important sort of slide, because early warning signals is where the problem starts. Yes, banks do get an indication that yes, there is a problem, but the magnitude of the problem is often not known. If banks, the credit committees, and everybody involved in the loan dispersal and the monitoring process is able to get these right, then I think there is definitely going to be a lesser NPA problem. There is no science to it. It comes with experience, and every case is different, so there is no fit formula. But early warning signals is perhaps the most important aspect of management of stressed assets. We are all aware of what the early warning signals could be, days past due in terms of SMA 1-2 reporting, longer debtor inventory days, leverage ratios, fallen margins, devolvement of LCs, BGs. All of these are some of the early warning signals, and it is very imperative that banks look out for these early warning signals. In my view, once the early warning signals sort of have stabilized and we see that the company is or has been in stress, in my view, it is at this stage that the forensic audit, etc., should be initiated. Because typically what we have seen is that early warning signals happen, have occurred, the company has been in stress for 1 year, 2 years, etc. Then there is an RBI like a trigger under the RBI framework or IBC, etc., where a forensic audit or a transaction audit is initiated. By that time, we are already about 3 years post the problem, when the actual cash flows issues have started. And if there is a diversion which has taken place, it's perhaps too late to sort of get that money back, because the diversion has already happened. You are already 3 years post that time period. The promoter has taken out whatever he wants to take out, and now even if he loses the company under IBC, etc., he's not that much bothered. So if you get the early warning signals right, and if you do the forensic at the correct time, I think they are great enablers to get the company back on track. Next slide. What exactly is restructuring? Restructuring is nothing but an act by the lender for economic or legal reasons to offer concessions to the borrower from your existing terms and conditions. It could involve reevaluating cash flows, decreasing the rate, taking additional security, promoter guarantees, reschedulement of ECBs with under regulatory approvals, revised documentation, all of that. So all of this comes within the ambit of restructuring. There have been cases where we have seen, for failed restructurings where the promoter, etc., restructuring was agreed. Promoter basically was able to get in the necessary funds within the specified timelines. But for some reason, the banks, I think, were not able to deliver on their promises or their, on the restructuring proposal for whatever reason. I don't know whether right or wrong, but for some reason they were not able to deliver, and the company then basically headed to liquidation. So not only did the banks lose money, the promoter who basically stepped up and put in money for a restructuring, he also lost his entire money. So that was clearly a lot of value that was lost in the process. Framework I will not touch upon because this has been extensively dealt with. in the previous session. So June 7th and August 6th, I will not touch upon. What I want to basically touch upon is emergency credit line. This is an RBI sort of RBI / Government of India initiative to correct COVID related issues. So borrowers who are standard, and this is I'm talking about emergency credit line 2.0, because I think before this there was ECL 1.0, etc. So under ECL 2.0, borrowers who were standard as of 29th Feb 2020 with less than 30 days of past due and debt which is between 50 crores and 500 crores are eligible for 20% of their exposure to be disbursed by banks under the emergency credit line. Now, this emergency credit line from a bank's perspective is guaranteed by the Government of India, and it has certain RWA benefits. That means the risk-weighted assets that the bank holds for the asset that it has lent out or the money that it has lent out, there are certain RWA benefits. Also, you are moving away from the credit risk of the corporate to a Government of India credit risk, which is obviously better. The broad frameworks is, the broad contours of the deal are that 75%, in case the loan goes bad, then 75% of this amount will be repaid within 30 days of the claim by the bank, and 25% on the conclusion of the enforcement of proceedings. The interest rate is capped at 9.25 and the tenor is 5 years, which includes a 1-year moratorium. The existing security, etc., is sort of extended to this loan, and we are seeing this is basically available to those companies who have faced stress due to COVID, and there is a lot of demand for this kind of emergency credit line. We are seeing a lot of corporates who are basically taking this, taking effect or taking benefit of this initiative by RBI / Government of India. What we understand is that the total corpus allocated under ECL was 3 lakh crores, of which the last update that we had was that almost 2,60,000 to 2,70,000 crores was already blocked, because I think once the bank agrees to give this additional funding, they have to immediately go to a particular website and block their particular amount that this is the amount that we are proposing to disburse under ECL. And that amount currently stands blocked at almost 80 to 90% of the originally envisaged amount. So this scheme has evolved over the last couple of months. This is where we are today in terms of ECL 2.0. One-time settlement. So now we're obviously coming to the various options that are available outside the framework and outside IBC. One-time settlement is definitely, like Pandeyji also said, this is definitely an option which is available for an amicable settlement between the promoter and the lender. Typically, it takes a lot of takes weeks and weeks of negotiation to agree on a suitable amount and the timelines within which it has to be paid. It would normally involve a haircut. Haircuts could range anywhere between upwards of 40-50% from a bank's perspective. And such settlements are only agreed or are normally agreed when future recovery options look bleak in terms of the operating cash flows and the security available to a bank in terms of enforcement, etc. If it's a long drawn-out process and the bank doesn't want to wait that long, maybe it's quicker in terms of resource management to enter into a settlement and move out of the exposure. Amount is typically expected to be paid within 3 to 6 months. However, it could extend. Broadly, the sort of 2 parameters that need to be kept in mind is that it cannot be the OTS amount should not sort of be more than 6 months to 1 year. Otherwise, it sort of tantamounts to a restructuring. And one has to justify that the NPV, that the present value of the cash flows that you're receiving under the OTS is more than the future cash flows or NPV of the future cash flows that you would receive under a restructuring or an enforcement of security. I think those, from a commercial perspective and decision-making perspective, this is what one has to keep in mind, which kind of triggers decision-making in this one-time settlement. Moving on to enforcement of security. Yes, options are available, but what are the timelines that within which the security can be realized and the value that is expected after the timelines is a tricky sort of a decision, because yes, most of the lending that is done is secured in today's times, because under IBC, etc., we all know unsecured lenders almost tend to get nothing. But when we look at enforcement of security, timing is very important, because anything more than 6 to 12 months, the value of the security sharply deteriorates. current assets, one can be almost sure that you will not recover much, because most of the current assets after 6 to 12 months, if they are just lying idle, whether debtors will refuse to pay up, your inventory will just lie as scrap. So not much is expected out of that. Fixed assets like land, building, etc. might have some value. If a company is perhaps being able to be sold as a going concern, yes, there is more value, but then the process takes longer. The tool through which you can enforce your security is obviously SARFAESI, which broadly people are aware of. Moving on to the next slide, this is a quick snapshot of the various tools which were available and the amounts that that have sort of been recovered. If you look at SARFAESI and IBC, like some of my earlier colleagues were mentioning, SARFAESI recoveries rates are about 26%, or the value that is expected is about 26%. IBC almost 45%. So that's obviously in sharp contrast to what we were seeing in Lok Adalats and DRTs. So definitely things have improved from an overall recovery perspective. Moving on, just more procedural. What does a SARFAESI process involve? It involves giving a notice, obtaining the latest valuation, fixing the reserve price. There are a lot of newspaper adverts which we see that banks want to sell off stressed properties. Not all sorts of buyers are forthcoming for stressed properties, because there is generally some caution that people like to sort of keep in mind while buying a stressed property, because in terms of legal formalities, is the documentation okay, will I get a clear title, all of that. In cases like Kingfisher, etc., we have seen it is public news and public knowledge that the assets, some of the assets were some of the good assets were finding no takers, because people were just skeptical of trying to sort of bid for such assets. There are cases where you try to auction a commercial or a residential property under SARFAESI, and a tenant basically comes and says that no, I have been living in this property, and etc. So the process gets delayed. So there are various sort of derailments that might occur in the realization of assets under SARFAESI. Some of the examples that we have seen, yes, there was, let's say, an asset which had 4x times cover in terms of land and building, plant and machinery, etc. But just there was no buyer which was forthcoming. In another case, we have seen where within the consortium, there were almost 80 properties of the promoter and promoter group companies which are collateralized to the banking consortium. But when you go to enforce it, the value was just not there. In another case, examples are basically where you have taken security of a ship, etc. So at the time when you give the loan, it was 2.5x cover. But by the time you go to enforce it, because no action was taken, the ships were just lying idle. By the time you actually go to enforce your legal right, you can almost expect zero recovery. So as I mentioned, timing is very important when you are trying to recover, when you're trying to enforce your right under SARFAESI or through asset recovery. The next option that we have is obviously litigation. It's generally not a preferred option, because we all know it is there are costs involved. It is expected to be fairly lengthy. But when there is no other option, I think litigation is the only option. There could be various within litigation. There could be various options, such as filing in DRT, filing a winding up petition, filing a summary suit that you might have obtained in an international jurisdiction. IBC, we all know, I will not touch upon that. You might have taken certain checks, etc., which in bounds you can initiate 138. Obviously, so you have to keep in mind that the litigation has to be initiated before the expiry of 3 years. Just quickly touching upon some of the options. DRT, yes, it's a procedural sort of a formality. You have to file an application, create all your facts, basically get all your facts in terms of previous documentation, when it was disbursed, etc. File the full history. This is basically generally seen to just protect limitation, because the recovery timelines in this are very, very long. Nothing less than 4 to 6 years on a bare minimum. So this is generally not a very preferred mode for recovery. This is generally used for saving on limitation. Winding up petition in the court. Yes, this is used, or this used to be used more frequently pre-IBC, because there was a real threat of the promoter losing the company. Again, this involves a full process of the full history, documentation, etc., which needs to be filed. But obviously, it involves the timeline in terms of when the application will come up for hearing and when you will get a verdict. But it does serve as an effective tool to bring the promoter on the discussion table. Summary suits is something that one can use where there are a lot of international where loans have been given in international jurisdictions. They are not necessarily governed by Indian law. They could be governed by English law and under the courts of, let's say, Singapore or some European jurisdiction. What can be done is you basically go and get your judgment from a jurisdiction such as Singapore, or wherever the loan documentation is based. You basically get that judgment and try to enforce it in India. That normally is slightly quicker, but there are also some challenges that one needs to keep in mind, because in various jurisdictions have their own procedures, etc. And sometimes we have seen that in Singapore, etc., when judgments were given, they were not necessarily by a judge, but it was basically by a low-level practitioner. And although the minutes of the hearing basically said that the defendant's lawyers had no instructions to oppose, and they almost indirectly admitted to a default. But when we try to enforce the jurisdiction in India, there were certain hurdles, etc. So definitely there are practical aspects involved in trying to enforce your right as a lender under the litigation framework outside IBC. And that is why a lot of people draw comfort from the options available under IBC. Assignment to ARCs is definitely another option that is available to try and find a resolution to an asset, because an ARC comes in and tries to give you some money upfront, and as well as there is an option of security receipts where you are able to get some sort of upside. As I mentioned in some of my previous slides, the value that are being offered by ARCs has gone up, but the strike rate and the strike rate of deal closure has been coming down. And if there are certain guidelines from RBI, etc., where the offer received from ARC is more than 30% outstanding in cash, then a Swiss challenge method has to be followed, and it does involve giving a preference to an ARC who may be an existing lender. In our experience, what we have seen is when we are speaking to ARCs, etc., if you are a working capital lender, and working capital by the very nature of its facility does not stand to get repaid, because it is almost like rolled over and it is a continuous facility. So we have seen some sort of resistance or hesitation from ARCs to come in that structure rather than a term loan structure, because ARCs typically want an exit. They come in with an exit strategy in terms of how can they recover money, either by repayment or from an equity upside or from a security upside. Typically, they do not prefer working capital structures where the facility is continuing on an ongoing basis. Now, moving on, I think there are some aspects which I thought would be relevant to touch upon, though they're not directly linked to restructuring, because guidelines of RBI for willful defaulter and all of these are separate, and it's a separate sort of a process and a framework that we have to follow. But why it is important is that under IBC, like we are all aware, there is a 29A eligibility restriction, and willful defaulters now are not eligible to bid for their own companies under IBC or under any other framework. So there is definitely a threat that if a company or a promoter has been declared as a willful defaulter or a fraud that I will touch upon in some of my previous slides, there is a genuine risk that the restructuring will not go through. However viable the plan is, however viable the company is, but if the promoter / management has been declared a willful defaulter or a fraud, then there is almost a negligible chance that any credit committee will approve a resolution plan with the same management. Yes, if there is a change in management, then there is a higher chance for things to sort of get approved. Again, economic offenses, this is linked, when we feel that there is a fraud, etc. There's a process which RBI has laid down for declaring the account as fraud, for referring it to EOWs, etc. And this we are all aware in some of the big names which come up which are involved in at the ED level or the EOW level. Just a quick snapshot of frauds. Again, as I said, frauds is a whole separate area which the RBI is looking at. But just in terms of frauds with respect to advances, now, if you look at the number as at September 20, it is almost 110 lakh crore. So that's definitely a big number. And if you look at, we looked at the total gross NPA number, which was almost 9 lakh crores as of March 20. Of that, almost 10% is sitting as fraud. So that definitely is a big number. If you see, I think the reporting requirements around fraud and to recognize fraud, etc., has been increasing, and RBI is sort of driving this in terms of questioning banks when they're not declaring as fraud and why they're not declaring it as fraud. So there is an onus on the banks to correctly and timely record frauds and such things like that. But obviously there is an implication on the restructuring from a promoter's perspective. So that's the only limited point that I wanted to highlight over here. I think to sum it up, I wanted to basically touch upon the fact that when you initiate a lending relationship, relationship with a promoter, there is a certain relationship which is sort of initiated. And in our experience, what has basically come to sort of help us is, if you continue to maintain that relationship, yes, you have to act tough, you have to initiate legal action, etc. But if you are able to still have that trust that yes, whatever the bank is doing is just from a professional reason, there is no sort of personal, it's not getting personal, and we are only doing our job and trying to find a win-win solution from a borrower and a bank's perspective. If that relationship and trust is still maintained while trying to recover your loan or restructure the loan, etc., I think the value that has basically come out of the process or of the transaction is far, far more. And I cannot stress on the importance of the relationship, that it is important to maintain with the promoter while this whole process is going through, because without the promoter's help, it is very, very difficult to get the value that you are looking for, or get a good value either from a restructuring or from an enforcement perspective. So I would like to emphasize the overall relationship that needs to be maintained with the promoter to sort of find a suitable and win-win solution from a banker and a borrower perspective. So I think this is what I wanted to sort of quickly highlight in terms of various options available outside RBI framework and outside IBC, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks a lot, Sailesh. Thanks for sharing your view on the provisions. Can I now request Mr. Kannan to speak a few words, please?
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm very happy to see the two excellent presentations earlier. In fact, a very, very detailed presentation we had. When this legislation was brought, the objective was whatever companies could be saved. And also they set the time limit. But we of course, we expected some of the legal hindrances which we saw. So most of the times we found that the number of days actually exceeded. Apart from that, we are not able to even resolve many of the cases. So many went into liquidation also. So when we talk about this insolvency, of course, now we are talking about 9 lakh crores of NPA. According to me, in many cases, the recovery can be more than 50-60% also. You take a case like IL&FS, and we say they have 350 companies. But at the same time, they also went and developed a lot of assets. For example, IL&FS before went into liquidation, they were the leading company for power projects. They had 14 large power projects in their portfolio. They had road projects, and of course, real estate and all that. Now they have decided that they'll sell the BKC block. Like that, if you see, most of the companies which are sick, if you ask me, many of them have got a lot of assets in the form of real estate. So if only we can prepare a kind of plan. If you ask me, the banks should, they have a division for what is called SAMG. SAMG Stressed Assets Management Group they have. but they are mainly trying to see how they can be resolved. They can create one more department in each bank, like a consulting wing. Like we have all these big four and all. Actually, they can even hire this type of people in the bank, where you can look at some of these large assets, large loans, where the money has been spent, and look at what are the assets they have, and based on that, how to monetize assets. So right now, as you are all aware, even government is looking at monetizing the assets of companies like BSNL and MTNL. So there is a very good chance that banks will be able to require a lot of money. We hear in some cases when they were referred to IBC, or when the government says it has to be closed, some of the promoters coming and saying that the bid is only 12,000 crores, 13,000 crores, it is worth 45,000 crores. Or you take a case like Punjab, the bank, cooperative bank in Mumbai, where the assets held by the owners are, the borrowers are more than 4,000 crores. So there are such cases where people say they want to come and settle money, or they say money could be recovered at a higher level. So we have to see these cases. And similarly, in many other cases, if you ask me, I know many companies went on a discount of 70, 80, 85%. And in these cases also, the banks could have recovered 30, 40%. So they have to, not only banks, the regulators, they have to prepare a kind of strategy whereby uh, basically uh, the process is very good. Apart from that, how to identify the assets which can be kind of monetized. It is very well possible. One good thing is that all these companies have got land and buildings. And when these companies were formed, they were all acquired at a very, very low price. Today, the value of these assets are very, very high. So many a times, these values are not reflected in the balance sheet. Balance sheet, when you see, it's only a book value. So it is not reflecting the real value. So, so this can be done. And like it was mentioned earlier, already government has decided that in the case of small and medium enterprises, only if you allow the existing promoter to continue, there is any chance that they can be recovered. Whereas for bidding for small and medium enterprise, you will not get many people who will come from outside and buy. Similarly, even many large enterprises, when you talk about acquiring, unless a company from the same field comes and say that we will take, they will be able to add value and able to turn it around. Others will find it very, very difficult, even if they come from some other industry. The fact that they come from some other industry means they have to start from new. So we have to focus on, even when you do the resolution and all that, the asset which is being handed over is handed over to people who are the same industry. So these are my views. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on the subject. And they've been pretty true.
Yeah.
Like, how we can add value out of the whole process and how IBC can be a good proposition. Well, now I would like
So
Manoj
one more
take
thing I
up
want
and
to
start.
add. One more thing I
Yeah,
Yeah, one
please.
more thing I want to add. Here, the practicing chartered accountants and of course cost accountants, all these people can add a lot of value. In fact, banks should have a pool of, let us say, every large bank. They should identify a pool of 100 chartered accountants who can help them in identifying, or they should have valuers, chartered accountants, and people, the companies or individuals who are experts in valuing assets. So they should have a panel who should look at these kind of cases and advise the banks. So that the bank should do.
Very true, sir. Sir, we have a raised hand by Mr. BD. You have any
1 minute,
question?
Kannanji. Kannanji, that
Yeah,
IBA,
sir.
IBA has already
Yeah.
empaneled,
Yeah.
authorized that monitoring agency like chartered accountants
Yeah.
and forensic auditors,
Yeah.
and with the process of selection, and
Yeah.
that has been 2 times done, and they have now getting quite a lot of major accounts. Consortium leader will select that agency and you will give the
Yeah.
account for close monitoring. Similarly, the other one also. And similarly, of course, for valuers, now they have to pass through the examination of the IBC. Earlier, their profession will not be, they have to pass through. And if they pass through, valuers are also getting good business. So your point is well taken, but that has been already taken steps by the IBA.
Sir, but each bank should have a panel, sir. IBC will have panel.
No. Earlier, banks were doing one panel. Like, we are also doing a panel for concurrent audit, but another thing is for stock audit and credit audit. All accounts up to a certain amount, 50 crores and above, we invariably give for credit audit. Because as you rightly said, we have to take the knowledge from the real professionals. And cost accountants also, only RBI or that has not been prescribed as a compulsory for that. But banks do take, because cost accountant also have a value to give for the, other than the statutory cost audit which they do for the corporate, banks also are engaging. And this is now has become because otherwise we have to have different sector specialists in the bank. Now, which bank also now, earlier they had, and now they are taking that sector specialist. But even then, we have to depend on the outside professional support. And those who know, normally send that to, please. Tell me. Kannan?
Sir, it is very, very important because 10% is the NPA. So even if they are able to recover 50% of that with their help, it will be really great.
We have hands raised by Mr. BD and Mr. Kiran Deshmukh. So I would like one person to please take a question.
Sir, my small, I want to know this 30 days period prescribed that account should not be more than overdue for more than 30 days as on 1st March 2020 to be eligible for restructuring under the RBI circulars of 2020. Is there any possibility of this period being extended beyond 30 days?
Pandey hai, but it is not, I think it is not being extended. It is as per the rule.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
A question from Mr. Kiran Deshmukh, please.
May I ask? Can I continue?
Yes, please. Please go ahead. Mr. Kiran, please go ahead.
The question is that, there has been money raising by a private limited company, which is definitely not listed. And the money has been raised for quite some time now. Before 2014, they have raised, and now they are finding it to repay it to the people from whom they have borrowed the money. Now, these kind of situations are existing, prevailing in the market. Not in my singular case. The money raised are quite large in sum, and I would say this is rather a practice by unethical money borrowers, and they are extending this practice not just in India but abroad also. So, as a society, as a country, it is definitely not a good practice. Do we have any mechanism to resolve this situation? Am I clear with my question, sir? Mr. Narendran?
I heard that. I thought Sanjeev, because they're all existing bankers.
Right,
this company has assessed to that company. Somebody should complain to SEBI, or somebody has to complain to RBI, because they have without approval from the RBI, no company can accept deposit if they are a lending institution or anything. That NBFC with the power to accept deposit, those institutions are closely monitored by the Reserve Bank. Now, any company simply taking money as a deposit and all, that other than that, otherwise they will come under the Companies Act. That again, that Companies Act will look into that. Then you have a SS, I think, action against that. Now, you are talking on behalf of the company or on behalf of the people who have been grieved out of that money giving and now not getting the money?
Yes, we are among the lenders. We are among the lenders.
You are the people who have lent money to that.
Right.
So that is now you should have been aware of the risk. You means anybody. That is a clear cut which RBI so many times they are giving awareness who are authorized to accept deposit, who are not authorized to accept deposit. And the other side, if a listed company and all of those companies under the Companies Act, they have the this one to accept deposit. Now, if these company, what you are referring is not coming under that and all, just like that, no, the local Nidhi deposit, this, that, and all.
No.
Fund,
it is a formal company, a private limited company.
भैया वो company ठीक है, but उनका where they were give, and they are not authorized to accept.
They are not authorized. But yes.
So similarly, that that when you are giving investors be aware, that is very important of the risk. And if they have diverted the money for some other purpose, all of them, one overnight company will come and overnight they will die. So that companies cannot be trusted.
Yes, you are right. Whatever you say is fully agreed and is well understood now.
अभी आपको ऐसा है तो if they are listed or what you call limited company with the coming under the Companies Act, as that you have to I think the Department of Corporate Affairs, there you have to come, and MCA you have to complain, and they may order investigation, serious fraud investigation office and all, they may order, provided a lot of people have been affected, and similarly criminal complaint has to be given.
Right. So, do you have any link or website or corporate or rather authorities where I can address this question?
So these are generally available on the net. Like you can normally search for
the link.
This is
to all the professionals.
This is beyond the purview of the today's discussion. So
yes, I know that.
You have to find on your own, and that you can take I think any person who is dealing in corporate affairs or those of the chartered accountants and who are all here specialists, you have to take their help and they will help you.
Yeah, I think all the professionals who are engaged in this meeting, most of them are
you have to contact them
only.
You have to contact them personally, and if it is such an eminent subject and they feel it is good, and after seeing due diligence they will look into that. That is their level of whether they should take it or not. Am I right, Kumar Kannan?
You are absolutely right, sir.
Yeah, you are right, sir. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I would now like having the open house on. Can I request Mr. Sandeep Bhatt to please share his thoughts about the market? Like, can I request Sandeep also to keep his open? Yeah, Sandeep.
Yeah, before I thank you, Sandeep. Namesake. Before I actually get into the markets, actually, what I wanted to, and first of all, thanks to all the three speakers who have actually given us a thought-provoking, session and presentations on all the aspects of IBC as well as the NCLT, as well as, in fact, Shailesh also mentioned the practical aspects of what is done with defaults as well as the ARC. Now, I had certain questions on these aspects. One is there is a thought process where people are reluctant to actually go in for a OTS when, with the feeling that once they go for a OTS, is there something where they get the CIBIL scoring or the rating or whichever rating, that gets impacted? Is that so? That is the first question. And the second question which I wanted to ask, and not ask actually, this is something which has been bothering me for quite some time, because I have myself come across at least a few cases where, there's a cutoff of 1st of January 2020 for all these, appreciation of the government giving grants and helping out the MSMEs. Now, what happens to a person who is not a willful defaulter, who's been going through the pain even prior to that? Because we understand that the economy has not been doing well for the past year or so, even before the the COVID incidents. So what is there in store for them if they have become NPAs even prior to 1st of January 2020? If somebody can actually throw light on that.
Yeah, I'll take that. So your first question is that if you go into OTS, So will there be a blot in the credit history of the company?
That's right.
Yeah. So basically now, because the entire credit history is recorded, so it will obviously come into your case that some OTS has been settled. But I think it is better than your history having a default. So it's not that bad that you had a OTS rather than having a default and then the lender going to court and you going through a litigation process. I think OTS is much better position than a litigation for recovery. That is
Right.
one. And your second question is that MSME already facing stress before this COVID. So I think there are already schemes. Before that also, RBI came out with some MSME restructuring schemes. Every bank has its own scheme. My bank keeps coming out with OTS schemes also for MSME customers. Recently, we closed one scheme in October, where all the MSME customers with credit limits up to 50 crore, they were offered a very, very lucrative OTS thing, and I think many people have availed that. So I think both banks and the government, they are quite concerned about the support to MSMEs, and we keep coming out. It is the only thing that you have to take the benefit of those schemes.
The only problem is if the promoters themselves don't have the capital to actually come out with the OTS. Yeah. That's the issue. So what they are afraid of is obviously their projects are good. In the long term, if they revive, the projects will be very good. The issue is they will have to sell at a valuation much below what they can achieve in the longer run. So that's the problem people are facing.
Yeah, well, agreed too. The only thing is that, see, this valuation is again like nobody sees the long term. No, the bank who is having a default at hand today, his best concern about the high concern is his balance sheet, not your balance sheet. You appreciate me? See, for a bank, he is more bothered about bank's balance sheet than the borrower's balance sheet, because he also has to survive in the market.
That's
As
true.
you already saw the figures, the banks were having NPAs up to 10%. I think there are banks in the market who are having NPAs something positive of 25% also. There are banks. They are still there, but they are. So for them, their survival is also at stake. So they cannot wait for long term to the money to come back, and then there is a pressure from RBI. And one more thing I have to add here. One thing that IBC has changed, if many people don't appreciate that, is that earlier the timeline given for a NPA loan was around 4 to 5 years to recover, right? You see the IRAC circular, you have 1 year for substandard, then 2 years for substandard, doubtful 1, doubtful 2, doubtful 3. So bank easily could stretch a NPA account for 4 or 5 years and take the process, including OTS, negotiation, everything was going on. After IBC, that process time has been squeezed to 1 year or maybe 1.5 years. Now, IBC can take a company to liquidation within 1 year. Agree? Similarly, even the resolution framework, the timeline for survival of a company has been squeezed from 5 years to maybe 2 years. So we should keep sense of that timeline. So now you have only 2 years to survive. Earlier, you could get time up to 5 years. That is my.
Okay.
Thanks. I would like to add here a couple of very important issues raised by the participants in the chat. One is about employees bidding in the IBC process. Well, internationally, there is a trend for many years about management buying out. And there is also funds available from PE investors for buying out. So this is a thought I would like particularly Mr. Pandeyji and Mr. Narendra to share. Another point was on shareholders. What is their fault? They tend to lose out. In a few cases, which was shared, shareholders have benefited, but 90% of the cases they have been losing out. Of course, a window is available now of a small percentage where they can benefit after the lenders are benefited in terms of getting back the money over a period of time. This is also important issues raised by the participant in chat mode. I'm glad such issues are being raised and we are addressing it. Some inputs from you, Mr. Pandeyji and Mr. Narendra, on these two critical issues. Then we'll have something on Bank Nifty from Sandeep. But
Mr. Narendra would like to take?
Yeah, no. I'll first Sandeep ji, that earlier आपका question. Suppose that particular company or whatever that has been affected due to adverse happenings in the industry per sector. Suppose there is some unseen things happening globally or domestically on that sector-wise issues. Then the rating agency will see when the sector aspect will improve. Then they will look at. But if it is due to their mismanagement, due to their lack of or diversion, or they have not pumped in enough capital which they have committed to the project, then naturally if they are going for OTC settlement, their particular account will suffer in the rating. But similarly, it is also not that the OTC account cannot get facility. But in the bank, same bank who has given OTC can give facility to him, provided he agrees for the whatever haircut, both the principal and interest, he has to bear again back to the bank. He has to pay, okay, first I will pay this, next year I will pay this. So if that is there in the board, they can take it, or management level. And if otherwise he is found in all fit, that party is good, except that it was due to various extraneous reasons, he may be again funded also. That's why his enterprise nature will not be suffering. He can continue with the enterprise. That position, even when he goes to another bank also, they normally insist that OTC account that you have to make good for the loss for your original bank. That is a priority. Now, of course, on that IBC and other things, Manoj, our Sanjeev is very authority. But I found that recently employees also have bid in the case of Jet Air, I think Indian Airlines, that not for the government disinvestment, they have bid for with the 50% by them, 50% maybe support by the outsider. They have bid. Similarly, even in so many cases, they have bid, but it is a open tender process. If their process technically and on the financially, if it is found suitable, then ideally that offer can also be considered in the method which is followed by the committee of creditors. So, and then they will go to the NCLT through that filing that resolution plan. So employees' interest per se, if it is a going concern and all, the new management also will take into account the employees' what you call specialization, knowledge and all, and they will get in the new management also continuity of the job. So that is on the employees. Now, as per my knowledge, suppose you say recently Yes Bank, when they went into the problem, the Reserve Bank had to write off whatever tier 2 capital or the perpetual capital, because the perpetual capital per se, that if there is a liquidation or if there is a loss, and if that is not, so they have to lose the money. So the perpetual capital has a better yield, but with the risk. Same way, now I think recently LVB Bank, Lakshmi Vilas Bank was taken over, was taken over by DBS. The shareholders, I think as per my knowledge, that DBS has to pump in only 2,500 crores to the bank. But all other, that has got completely wiped out. So now, if for your information, even in futuristically, there was guidance. Suppose financial institution going into problem, the depositor also will come in par with as a equity holder, and that money also can be used for paying the outstanding liabilities. That is but unfortunately, of course, that law has not been passed by the government, and government is still examining, and they have enhanced the insurance cover. So your point is, in the scheme of things, the old shareholder also will continue, and their shareholding is taken care by the new management. Then the old shareholder will get value maximization. But if the new management is, but actually it is a continuing company. So going company, the new management taking, I think shareholders' interest to the limited extent will be protected if it is a part of the resolution plan. This is my knowledge. Other thing you can ask Pandey. पांडे जी हमारा करेक्ट है?
Yes, sir. You are very correct. Yeah.
हाँ.
So basically, from employees, as he was asking, no. So many, we have seen like 4 or 5 cases in NCLT cases. The employees have come forward. One I remember the Ride and Tailor, where the employees have submitted a resolution plan. The good part of the IBC is that anybody can submit a resolution plan. It can be individual, it can be a cooperative, it can be a society. Anybody is free to submit a plan. And I think gradually a market is developing for support of these kind of bidders also. One is that there is some the funds, foreign funds are coming in, who are ready to provide funds to these people to get funding for the plan. Secondly, they can contribute their claims as a funding. Like employees have a claim equal to the financial creditors. So their ranking in the IBC, especially for workmen, is equal to the financial creditors. So whatever financial creditor get in a resolution plan, equally it has to go proportionately to the employees or worker claims. So they can contribute that part of their claim as a part of the funding of resolution plan. Then their PF gratuity dues, they can be contributed. They can always go back to a bank to get funding. So that is the new product coming up. We have funded 3-4 cases of IBC, including Bhushan Steel. I think the other one is this one, Ruchi Soya, where banks have funded the resolution plan. So that is another possibility for employees, that partly they can contribute and partly they can go to another bank to get funding for the resolution plan. So all these possibilities are there. One more possibility for OTS, as one gentleman was asking, now another product is coming to the market, which is like compromise funding. So there are people, there are funds in the market who will be ready to provide you funds for the compromise proposal also. So there are many opportunities and possibilities being opened up by the IBC. Another one is like the litigation funding. In many cases, most of the debtors' claims and other claims go waste once the company goes into dissolution. So now we see there is a interest from international funds. They are coming in for litigation funding also. So they will be able to take over the claims, actionable claims, as well as fund the recovery of claims. So all these things are.
Yeah, off balance sheet items like arbitration award and other things.
Yes.
There will be funding. So that becomes a separate part of that, and the funder can have access to that later. That is correct.
I would now request each panel member, each expert to answer very crisply on the most important point in 2021, to what extent the banks will be able to raise capital. There's a big opportunity ahead. FIs are interested, DIs are interested, mutual funds are interested, and the public are interested. HNIs are interested. There is huge oversubscription in IPOs and FPOs also. Very, very crisply, each expert on the panel answer about the ability of the banks, whether private, whether PSUs, or whether others also in financial services. And then we would have the Bank Nifty chart for the year ahead. Starting with you, Mr. Narendra, then Sanjeev Pandey, Mr. Ramesh, Mr. Rathi, Shailesh, and Mr. Kannan. And also, we'll have the open house view. Everybody is welcome to put on their comments on the chat mode about the prospects of the banking sector. It's a big global opportunity. The best budget also may be ahead of us.
Yeah, Manoj ji, abhi just in the initial period of COVID itself, the new generation private sector banks raised around 70,000 crores capital. And that is followed by a few public sector banks of bigger size. They also, IPO means your follow-on issue or plus your tied to capital, they raised around 25,000 crores. And other day, the finance banking secretary has mentioned that just not due to the capital requirement per se, but because the Reserve Bank also mentioning that all of them should have a buffer, not to meet the pandemic shock as well as any other shock coming after the government, all these measures are why it will be taken back, or also to see some unanticipated such losses, so that there is a move by the government of India also for all of them, that you must start aiming at IPO or your through market. And recently, I think Canara Bank raised, and and now even Punjab National Bank has a plan, and I think later State Bank also, that Pandey can say, they are also having plan. So all of these merged and stronger banks will come with market also. They will give chance for the what you call institutional placement, as well as the retail investors, and they all a large investors base. And it's also a potential good issue, in the sense some of them public sector bank per se, this is my view, but I cannot, because that shares are what you call quoted, or that the valuation has come down only due to the some this type of feeling, but the real intrinsic value of these shares are much already covered, and the provisioning coverage also has gone up now, 67 coverage, and all the old accounts and all 100% coverage. With that type of coverage, and which on recovery through IBC, Moses or whatever, that money will come back to the profitability. So they're able to raise the capital, and those who enter capital by issue subscribed shares will have a futuristically, if the economy comes turned around and comes with the 10% growth in the next year, and then average 7 to 8% growth, I think banking sector shares also are going up. Apart from that, the government has provided another 20,000 crores in the interim budget for giving capital to these public sector banks. And of course, that these banks will conserve capital in a way that they will also conserve capital, they will enhance the profits, which are all now visible, except for this COVID shock came. Had that not come, ideally these banks were already in the recovery mode. So that their shares are also likely to come, and it can have a good acceptance. This is my view.
Very good view.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mr. Narendra has covered most of it. I'll just add few points. Like one is currently the public sector as such, and public sector banks particularly, they are not getting valued to the underlying value this year. Most of the market price must be below the book value. So I think there is some perception game here, like private sector banks are being perceived as more efficient or more this thing, and of course they have some lesser NPA. Reason obviously is because they never lend to any risky assets. They never lend to infrastructure sector. They never lend to road sector. So they never took a risky entered the risky game. Whereas public sector bank, being the custodians of the progress of the country, we have to lend even to riskier assets, because without doing that, that will not take off. Your infrastructure would not have taken off without us funding the infrastructure. So that is one point. So I think some perception right now is slightly negative. So banks will be waiting for the right time and right sentiment to appear in the market. Like if you look at the SBI share, so I think even if you value the subsidiaries itself, the value of the share must be much more. Just value the SBI card or SBI Life, SBI General. There are many listed subsidiaries. If you just tie up the value of them and put the value to the share, it may be much higher to the value we are getting today in the market. So I think there's a perception game. Second thing is that because of IBC, the public sector banks have seen a considerable recovery, which is actually a contribution to the capital itself. Like in most of these large accounts, they were 100% provided already. So when we got the recovery under SR Steel, so it was a 100% addition to my capital, because the provision was written back. So that is also adding a comfort factor, whereas we are not desperate to go to the market. So we will be timing the entry to the market. And I think that time will come, because now already the private sector banks have started going up. They are quite well off after the low downs. So I think next stage will be the public sector. And third factor is that the banking is a sector which gets hit first in any slowdown and which gets benefited first in any pickup in the economy. So that is already happening. That is visible. I think we'll be able to see in the December results and then March results. So that will add to the strength of the bankers, the balance sheet, and then they can show the EPS to the market so that they get better valuation. So rather than immediately entering the market and selling share equity at a low price, I think they will wait for 3 to 6 months to enter the market at the right time. That is my personal opinion. Thank you.
If I correctly told. And another thing, like all of you may be, of course, each bank may vary, but whatever capital provided by the government, I saw one paper report, the current valuation of that bank shares, public sector, has gone up by 14%. But in some banks, it may be lower. But overall, currently for government, that has given positive valuation. So, but the implied positive value incremental, that will be much, much higher. And another important, Manoj was asking yesterday night, that the strategic PSU, that as per the Atmanirbhar Bharat, that government decided that we will not have more than 4 PSU units in each sector. Now, there was some paper report that even in the bank also, whether because it is included in that, we have to see. Banks also are going to have not more than 4 public sector banks. And in that case, a few banks have been lined up or suggested by the maybe Niti Aayog or internal study that they can be taken in the event of government drive for disinvestment and all. But whether that will also come in the recent immediate past or in over a period of time. Of course, overall, another issue of your webinar was the disinvestment per se in the current year has not received the so much impetus, and they were able to take lesser money. But pipeline, the BPCL, LIC, and Air India already there, and Shipping Corporation of India, and some more Cement Corporation of India, and they have also identified. So the overall target this year may not be, but due to the COVID only. But the lined up for the next this financial year, there will be a substantial disinvestment taking place. Now, for the opportunities for the bank, in the infrastructure space itself, 111 lakh crores in the next 5 years. And quite a lot of them are road, railway, port, and all that lined up. And I am sure some of the bigger capitalized banks will take a share in that. And of course, there is an opportunity for another DFI also to be established. And the government must be thinking on that. And some of you who are interested, I'm not for time. The RBI itself, as governor, has identified 10 sectors where banks should take the new area of growth. So these 10 sectors are all sunrise sectors, and like pharmaceuticals, all that, which are now after COVID going up. So banks will now start looking at funding also because of the liquidity and all. So after some time, the credit growth also will pick up, and the profitability of the bank also. This is our presumption, and it has to happen actually. And as I do agree with that, some of the new generation banks are very focused on some sector only. So that is where they are in a different mode. But public sector bank has to be looked at the major role they played on the inclusive growth as well as infrastructure development, and giving a boost to the GDP growth. So when the economy starts moving with our drive for reaching 5 trillion economy, I'm sure banks will get opportunity, and banks will come back with the profitability also.
Yeah. In terms of capital, so since you're talking about growth and 5 trillion and all that, we require a lot of money in the system, like Mr. Narendra said, 110 lakh crores of infrastructure and all. And most of that, how it is going to happen is that government is speaking to, they spoken to these 20 large institutions. As you are all aware, this the JBIC, the Japanese institution, already they invested I think $1.5 billion in both SBI and NTPC. Canada funds itself is about $60 billion in India. Japanese funds are already 60 billion as of today. So there are already 120 billion they invested. Now investors around the world are looking at investing, but all that money has to come through banks. So one of the estimates of RBI is that once these concessions get over, RBI expects that the NPA levels will go up. So when the NPA levels go up, the estimate is that at least 1 lakh crore of capital is required by these banks. So 1 lakh crore means they can mobilize another 7-8 lakh crores to lend money, 9 lakh crores. As of today, our NPA is about 9%. That is about 9 lakh, 10 lakh crores. That is the NPA today. So once they raise this 1 lakh crores, then they'll be able to raise another 8 lakh crores through other modes, which they can support for growth. And like it was mentioned by Mr. Sanjeev, one of the issues today is that the valuation of banks, especially PSU banks, many of them are quoting at 0.3, 0.5 of book value, which is very, very low. But if you really look at the underlying assets of these banks, all these PSU banks, they have quarters in almost most of the cities they operate. If you just look at their real estate itself, is a very good valuation. I remember 4 or 5 years back, there was a move by finance ministry where they said that some of these values can be captured by banks and it can be reflected in the balance sheet. I'm not aware what is the status. Maybe Sri Narendra and Sri Sanjeev, they'll be able to comment whether they were able to identify these assets and say that they can be kind of reflected in the revaluation of assets in their balance sheets. I'm not aware. But certainly, like it was all mentioned, every private sector bank, they are focusing on only few sectors. So it's obvious because the private sector, they are mainly focused on the shareholder wealth and shareholder return. So they are very, very careful. The fact that some of the banks and the leading banks, they have reached 4 lakh crore cap market cap shows that they never went into sectors which are risky. But they are very, very careful in lending to sectors where they get good margins. So going forward, if you ask me, like it was mentioned by Sri Narendra, the first 3-4 months itself, all the private sector banks, they raise capital of 60,000-70,000 crores. Now the estimate is that the RBI and finance ministry, they are feeling at least 1 lakh crores have to be mobilized as a capital by the banks. So if you ask me, if you are talking about high economic growth, if we talk about high funding, then certainly capital is required. But one more factor we have to keep in mind, as of today, all the banks are sitting on a liquidity of 7 lakh crores. So every day they are not able to utilize, they put the money with RBI in the repo. So first, as it was mentioned by Sri Narendra, so 10 sectors they identified. These banks have to start lending. So far, they are not lending one. And of course, second was why they are not lending was also most of the large corporates are operating at less than 70% capacity today. Only when they reach 80%, they will think about setting up new plants. So only when they think about setting new plants, then the credit demand will go up. Otherwise, credit demand is there, but that is for sectors where they are really in trouble. So when you lend money to these sectors, obviously the NPA will go up. But capital raising is the only way where the banks can also kind of recover, plus they will be able to fund. These are.
Well, it's been a long time. Like, we have spent around 3 hours and 10 minutes discussing on various aspects and various things. I thank all the, participants, the speakers over for their valuable time and sharing their knowledge. I'd like to thank Mr. Narendra. I would like to thank Mr. Sanjeev Pandey. I would like to thank Mr. Shailesh Agarwal, Mr. P.S. Rathi, Mr. Ramesh, Mr. Kannan, Mr. Sandeep Bhatt, each and everyone. And I would like to even thank the participants who have been with us all the time and even trying to put forward their questions. All questions have been pretty good, pretty well answered by all the people over. And I would like to thank Manoj for the initiative and where we are trying to have this session every week on week, so that there can be knowledge sharing taking place all the time, and that will really be helpful for us all professionals to grow ahead. I would like to say that on the next Saturday, again on 9th January, we are having a seminar, the session again, which will cover the digital and the cyber security space. Considering the current digital economy and where everything is getting online, it has become important that security has to be given a lot of importance so that everyone can stay well and good. That's all from my side. Anybody like to say anything? It will be a pleasure. I hope you all enjoyed your
I would like to add. I would just like to add. It's a very good. The panel speakers talked about sectors and identified by the RBI also. The sectors, the market rewarded in 2021 in India were pharmaceuticals, was IT, and the financial and banking sector. We are in the top 3. As indicated by the expert participants, there is huge opportunity in the banking and financial sector. Also, indications were there. Intrinsic value is much higher. That also the experts shared. So I hope the financial and banking sector would continue to be in the top 3, and regularly sessions are on, and the wealth management series is continuously on week by week, along with other experts in all the domain areas from each and every sector, knowledge sharing with practical issues, live issues, really wonderful. And I would like to thank all the participants, all the expert panel members, and wish everybody a great and wonderful 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manojji. Thank you, Narendraji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Fine work you are doing. So on behalf of our speakers also, we thank the organizers for doing this grant. And our services are available always. Okay.
Great, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent.